Okay, welcome back everyone. This is part 2 of the policy topic analysis, and so we'll just jump in kind of straight off where we left off last time. So the kind of next half, right, we just talked about picks. We're now going to talk about specific negative strategies. So the next negative strategy I want to talk about is the USF. Obviously, I think the USF will be a major affirmative for a lot of reasons, right? And so the question that we kind of should be asking ourselves, right, is what's going to happen here. And I talked about a lot of specific affirmatives above, but this will be the, for both kind of time reasons, right? I don't want you to be here for like 5 hours listening to talking about ideas, about counterplans, or dissents, but also because I think the USF is instructive enough that it serves as an outline for other affirmatives, or how you should approach other affirmatives in the negative research. And so this will be the main one that we discuss. I think there's kind of rich ground to both sides. Specifically, I'm, kind of my area of topic expertise coming from policy, so it gives me kind of a good idea of what things are viable or not. And I think it serves as really a focal point of a lot of the literature that we're able to engage in. Right, there's kind of an inevitable kind of filtering of information, especially when we type keystrokes into Google, that we will be getting a lot of kind of English focused information, and so this might be the maybe with like Canada and the UK that has the most viable literature that we're able to access. Also, you get like unique U.S. hedge advantages, which I think is a very compelling thing for a lot of debaters, and is a reason why this would be an extra. Thing to vote for. The first thing, right, the obvious thing that should be the first thing that pops in your mind between now and November is the 2020 dissent. I put this in parentheses because there are a couple of other dissents. The general idea is that Biden wins now because of decreased turnout among people who are just like forever like done with Trump, right? The same way that they're just like, even though they are conservative in principle, they cannot bring themselves to vote for Trump, and so they choose not to vote instead. Right, which is kind of exactly the blueprint that Doug Jones laid out in Alabama. But if you force them to vote, they will grit their teeth and vote for Trump, because they cannot decide that they will vote for Biden. Right? They hate Trump a lot and they hate Biden a lot, so they sit out. But when push comes to shove, they'll vote for Trump. That's the uniqueness in the link, right? The sad face is obviously just a litany of existential impacts that Trump engenders. Take your fair pick, right? Climate change, collapse of the EU, NATO, simmering U.S.-Russia tensions, economic decline, coronavirus, weakening antitrust law and informational distortions, decreases in innovation, just about anything you want. There's not like specifically a lack of existential impacts to go with it, right? The natural pairing to this is the state's counterplan, right? Everyone's favorite friend, right? It was alluded to in the affirmative, right? States have better jurisdiction, which makes them a better actor. The obvious problem is that it avoids the 2020 dissent, which is, I think the big boomstick that we have here, which is very good. And it also is very flexible because, you can talk about specific states. Specific states might have other policies. You can read like multi-level planks that do a lot of different things, which the app can't do, and a lot of things like this. It's also important to recognize, right, that a lot of these things are just like cannot be permuted, because the idea of the states and the federal government doing things at the same time in terms of kind of regulation on the voting creates a lot of like weird preemption, like preemption arguments. I forget the technical term. I think it starts with a C. But there's like another technical term for when the federal government tries to force states to do something that like is contradictory to their policy. And it starts all types of like constitutional crises. The next negative argument specifically, I think, is the ConCon counterplan, right? And so I said that this was maybe a mechanism that the USF could go through, but a lot of teams won't really think about that, and they'll just read United States federal government. The ConCon app also uses the states as well as the federal government, so apps specifying USFG aren't able to get this ground. So, right, the obvious idea is ConCon stands for Constitutional Convention, which is what it uses. It also does take time, right? You shouldn't be fiating state ratification. Well, this is a couple of possible options, right? You could choose to fiat state ratification, which creates odd competition arguments, right? Or you could choose not to. The idea is that even if you don't, the fact that the federal government passes it sends a strong signal to the states, who will then independently ratify it anyway. The evidence on this is actually not that strong, in the sense that like no one's saying it won't happen, but no one is saying it will happen either. Just because no one is talking about a world where the U.S. mandates compulsory voting past the kind of sophist democracy arguments that have been ubiquitous in the common layer literature. You also have these odd. The last thing you can go for are like these odd intrinsic advantages to having a constitutional convention. Like having a constitutional convention gives Democrats, who are in control of more Senate seats, governorships, I think now, the ability to ratify other changes to the Constitution, like the Equal Rights Amendment or other good things that stop Republican bad things and prevent extinction. The next argument is a ConCon set. There is no relationship to the counterplan. The idea is that you just turn all of those intrinsic advantages I was talking about, because even though Democrats have more governorships, I think Republicans are still in control of more state houses, and so the idea ends up just being all of the good things that Democrats could do, Republicans could do bad things instead. Right? Any mandatory directive by the federal government necessarily violates the way that the Constitution is written right now, which triggers a constitutional crisis which must be resolved. And so durable fiat implies that eventually a constitutional convention must be held, which Republicans then use as an excuse to pass all types of horrifying things, like enshrining marriage between one man and one woman, banning abortions. Just imagine every post-apocalyptic fascist policy ever getting passed being passed. Yeah. The quartz counterplan is maybe a softer version of the ConCon counterplan. Basically, right? I didn't realize I had the same picture twice. That's fine. Basically, the idea is that the legal ruling right now is based on kind of interpretations of the Voting Rights Act or other statute, right? And so what happens is that the courts rule that voting actually has to be mandatory as a form of speech, and so you avoid disads you avoid disads probably based on a delay argument, because the courts won't rule until the courts don't rule on issues until June. I don't know why I was blanking about that. It also avoids the politics dissent if you phrase it right, because of the initial kind of delay argument and things like docket inertia. That's actually all I have for now. I know kind of a lot of the specific positions are maybe vaguer. My hope is that based on these, you have a general idea of where you want research to go. And obviously Slack me, or Slack the channel, right? Slack the policy channel if you have any further discussions. Thank you for watching. Yeah, that's the end to part 2.